Over the rolling grasslands of Kenya's Ol Pejeta Conservancy, the first light of dawn bled slowly into the sky. The sun, red and immense, crept upward, turning the horizon into a sea of molten gold. A restless wind carried the dry scent of dust and brittle grass, whispering across the plains. Not far from a thicket, a cackle of spotted hyenas gathered in frenzy. They circled a zebra carcass, their laughter like cries mingling with the tearing of flesh and the grind of bone. The air was thick with the sound of growls and snapping jaws. On the outskirts of the feeding chaos, a young female lingered. Her fur was rough, patchy from hunger and strain. She was heavily pregnant, her belly dragging against the ground as she crept forward. This was no skilled hunter. For most of her life, she had survived on scraps left behind by stronger individuals, tolerated only at the fringes of the clan. In this dry season, when food was scarce and tempers ran hot, her chances of securing a meal were slimmer than ever. Driven by desperation, she edged closer to a strip of meat dangling from the carcass. But before her jaws could close, the matriarch lunged. The leader's powerful teeth clamped down on her shoulder, ripping flesh. Pain flared through her thin body as she collapsed under the blows. The growls that followed left no room for resistance. The female cowered, retreating as the others looked on. No one intervened. This was the law of the clan. The weak were pushed aside. Bleeding and humiliated, she limped away. The hunger in her belly gnawed deeper than the wound on her shoulder. For days afterward, she scraped by on insects, the occasional lizard, and the precious dew that clung to grass in the mornings. Loneliness pressed in on her as sharply as hunger, yet the stirrings of life inside her belly urged her forward. She could not surrender. By late afternoon one day, she left the clan's territory altogether. Alone, she dragged herself toward the edge of the reserve, where the grass thinned and the land grew quiet. It was dangerous here, but at least no rivals would attack her. As night fell, the wind howled through the clearing, whipping dust into the air. She curled into a shallow hollow, digging desperately at the soil to carve a shelter. Then came the contractions. Her body convulsed with violent waves of pain. She groaned, every muscle trembling, sweat and blood matting her spotted fur. Hours stretched on until, at last, a small black cub slid into the world, its eyes sealed shut, its tiny cries breaking the silence of the night. Despite her exhaustion, the mother licked the membrane away, coaxing the newborn's first breaths. The cub whimpered weakly, nuzzling against her belly in search of milk. But her body, drained and starved, produced only a few precious drops. She lay curled around her child, shielding it from the wind. Her eyes heavy with fatigue but bright with determination. Through the cold night, she stirred repeatedly, nudging the cub closer, making sure the chill would not steal its fragile life. At dawn, the wound on her shoulder swelled grotesquely, pus oozing with each twitch. Her fever burned hotter, her breaths rasped. Food and water were still absent, yet she did not abandon her cub. Each noise in the brush put her on edge. Though frail, she was ready to fight for the tiny life pressed against her side, but her strength was fading. Her eyes dimmed, her body trembled, and her breaths came shallow. Then, from across the plains, came the low rumble of an engine that a patrol vehicle approached, its tires crunching over the dry soil. Behind the wheel sat Peter Monroe, a seasoned conservationist who had patrolled Ol Pejeta's fringes for years. His sharp eyes scanned the landscape until he spotted the thin silhouette of a hyena shielding something small that he slowed the truck, cautious not to startle them. From a distance, he watched. The mother could barely lift her head. Her cub, tiny and unafraid, peeked curiously at the vehicle. Peter's chest tightened. He recognized the urgency. If he waited, both would die. Climbing down quietly, he approached step by step, speaking in low tones. The mother growled faintly, but she was too weak to rise. Peter knelt, producing a syringe. With practiced hands, he injected a mild painkiller into her flank, easing her suffering. He checked her wound, hot, swollen, dangerously infected. Then he examined the cub, underweight but alive, clinging desperately to life. Lifting his radio, he called for backup, a veterinary team and an ambulance truck. While waiting, he wrapped the cub in a towel, placing it gently against its mother's body to keep them both calm. When the team arrived, they slid the mother onto a stretcher. Peter carried the cub close, his hand shielding its tiny body from the wind. Inside the rescue vehicle, he watched their breathing, alert to every shift, the center. The mother and cub were placed in an isolation ward. Veterinarians cleaned her infected wound, injected antibiotics, and connected 4 fluids to restore hydration. The cub was fed a substitute milk formula, its small body relaxing as nourishment filled it. Under the dim light of the ward, 2 fading lives flickered back toward strength. The first nights were tense. The mother barely touched the soft meat prepared for her, her eyes heavy with fever. Yet each time her cub whimpered, she stirred, nudging it close, licking its tiny body. Slowly, with care and time, recovery began. By the end of the week, she ate more, her strength returning in small increments. The cub grew brighter-eyed, toddling a few shaky steps within the straw-lined pen. Vets changed the bandages daily, ensuring the infection no longer spread. Peter visited often, speaking softly from the doorway. The hyena began to recognize him, no longer growling when he approached. Instinct remained. She guarded her cub fiercely, but there was no mistaking the trust that grew from survival shared. Weeks passed. The cub's glossy black coat sprouted pale spots, its legs steady, its play more energetic. The mother, stronger now, began to teach the cub through play, nipping gently, pulling, demonstrating movements essential for survival in the wild. A larger enclosure was prepared for them, filled with grass and shade, where caretakers set up practice hunts using bait on ropes. The mother lunged clumsily at first, but soon regained her agility. The cub copied eagerly, stumbling but determined, its instincts awakening. Morning after morning, Peter watched quietly, pride etched across his face. Every leap, every playful pounce, every cautious stalk was proof of progress. Their diet remained rich with nutrients, preparing them for independence. Muscles grew taut, reflexes sharpened, and energy pulsed through their once frail bodies. Months later, veterinarians confirmed what everyone hoped. Both mother and cub were ready for the next stage. They were transferred to a semi-wild section of the reserve, an expansive area of grassland dotted with shrubs and small lakes. Here, natural prey roamed freely. First, caretakers supplemented their food, but soon the mother realized she must hunt. With the cub trailing, she stalked the tall grass, ears pricked, body low. Their first catch was modest, a field mouse, but the victory filled the air with joy. Each day brought lessons. She taught her cub to read scents on the wind, to track prints along the damp earth, to wait patiently before the pounce. The cub fumbled often, dashing too early, missing its quarry. But with each mistake came correction, and with each chase came improvement. From a distance, the staff watched through binoculars, noting the pair's transformation. The mother's muscles tightened with strength, her leaps regained power. The cub matured quickly, its spots now distinct, its confidence blooming. Together, they became agile, alert, and capable. By afternoon, they often lay under trees, grooming each other, their bond strong as ever. Each successful hunt they shared, reinforcing the connection forged in hardship. In time, they no longer needed human aid. They hunted independently, fed themselves fully, and lived by the rhythms of the wild. Last. The day came for their release. On a quiet morning, the team loaded the mother and cub into a transport cage and drove them to an open stretch of savanna. The door swung wide, and for a moment they hesitated. Then, with steady steps, the mother led the way. The cub bounded beside her, their silhouettes merging into the tall grass. From a distance, Peter Monroe stood with folded arms, his heart heavy yet full. He watched until they disappeared, knowing the wild had reclaimed them. The hyena who had once been rejected by her clan had found strength in survival, her story rewritten through resilience and a mother's fierce devotion. Together, she and her cub had overcome abandonment, hunger, and pain. Their journey became more than just survival. It was a symbol of nature's endurance and the quiet miracles born from compassion. And across the savanna, the wind carried their story, a reminder that even in the harshest wilderness, hope can bloom.